Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Board of Education meeting on February 19th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. in the boardroom of the Administration Building at 70 Conover Road, Colts Neck, New Jersey. Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, this meeting has been duly advertised in the Asbury Park Press and is scheduled of meetings dated January 16th, 2025, notice of which has been filed with the Deputy Clerk for Colts Neck Township, and the requirements of posting of notices have been met. If everybody would please rise for the flag salute, it will be to my right-hand side. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay, I'd like to get a roll call, if everybody can please have their microphones on at this time. Thank you. Ms. Malasco.
Yes, roll call. Mrs. Camera.
Present.
Mrs. Horowitz.
Present.
Mr. Arrico.
Here.
Mrs. Ramirez.
Here.
Mr. Rignetta.
Present. Virtually.
Participating remotely. Thank you. Mr. Scales.
Present.
Mr. Scarpa.
Here.
Mrs. Volpe.
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, perfect. I'd like to see if Mrs. Camera could read our mission statement this evening.
The mission of Colts Neck Township Schools is to empower and inspire students to be confident, creative, self-sufficient learners who maximize their strengths and talents and contribute as responsible participants in their ever-expanding world.
Okay, great. I am going to ask for a motion to move the minutes under the approval of minutes resolution. If I could get a motion?
Motion?
Great. Okay, can I get a roll call, please? Any questions or comments? I'm sorry. Anybody have any comments on those?
Vinnie, this is actually directed to you. I thought for Vice President, you had abstained, but I wasn't sure, or did you vote no for me? I don't remember.
I abstain.
That's what I thought, and it's written that he said no on,
Oh, yeah, please direct that.
okay, thank you. That was all.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Cameron.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep, so whenever you're ready.
Approval of minutes, Mrs. Camera.
Yes.
Mrs. Horowitz.
Yes.
Mr. Arrico.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez.
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta.
Yes.
Mr. Scales.
Yes.
Mr. Scarpa.
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carried.
Okay, at this time, this is one of the best parts of being on the board. I could guarantee everybody here agrees with me. These evenings when we recognize our students in this district is such a great honor, and you know, I'm proud to have you all here tonight. So I'm going to pass it over, you know, to Dr. Garibay, and she could present these fantastic awards to these lovely students.
Not often am I told I need a microphone, but when we're live streaming, I do. So I want to apologize. So one of the, as Mrs. Volpe said, one of the best things we get to do here is provide so many different opportunities for kids to thrive and excel and be who they are and celebrate that every single day in every which way. So tonight we're recognizing three amazing young ladies from our district who really were shining bright. There's a million awards we could give out every day for things that kids do in this district that we're so proud of. But these three were something a little bit special, and we want to certainly continue this tradition of honoring kids. So the first person I'm going to recognize is we had two students this year who tried out and made the All Shore Intermediate Band and representing Colts Neck. So Autumn Reinick, and Liliana Nicholson are both incredibly talented musicians and made our Cedar Drive community proud as they were accepted into the All Shore Intermediate Band this year. The audition process is quite competitive as students from middle schools throughout Monmouth and Ocean counties vie for a seat in the ensemble. Through preparation of scales, solos, and sight reading skills, Autumn and Liliana each scored well in their respective sections and were accepted along with 63 other students. Auditions are scored blindly with band directors from participating schools serving as judges. Here in Colts Neck, Autumn plays the clarinet in the 8th grade band, Colt band, and jazz ensemble. She has participated in the band program for 5 years, having gotten her start with Mrs. Chandler in 4th grade. Liliana plays mallet percussion in the 8th grade band and the piano in jazz ensemble. She has been practicing for many years and even studies piano and composition with Mrs. Tarby, our beloved prior wonderful retired CRES music teacher. The opportunity to perform with the All Shore Band allows students to perform alongside the best of the best. This year, the group performed musical selections from a wide variety of styles, including a march, jazz standards, and even a movie soundtrack. Bravo to both Autumn and Liliana, who would you please join me for your certificates. And these say, so I'm going to hand them to you. Ready? The Colts Neck Township Board of Education acknowledges that Autumn and Liliana, on this 19th day in February in the year of 2025, is hereby recognized by the Colts Neck Township Board of Education for their outstanding musical talent and for being an exceptional representative of both Cedar Drive Middle School and the Colts Neck Township Schools. Congratulations, ladies. You make us so proud. Say something? Do you want to say something? Come on over here. About your experience?
All Shore was a very, very good experience. I never thought I would be able to be in it with Lily, one of my really good friends, and I was shocked when we both made it. And I'm just really grateful that Mr. Brown helped us and helped us get into this amazing group.
Even though it was hard, I'm thankful that I pushed through it, and it was a great experience, and I learned a lot from it.
Thank you so much. Kayla Berkner was selected this year, identified by Mrs. Hums and teachers and administration of Cedar Drive Middle School. What's going on? You are watching me.
You want this one?
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. She was selected to participate as a student panelist in front of approximately 400 people, right, who attended the Monmouth County Schools Partnership for Wellness earlier this month. And the focus of that event, we started a few years ago, is focusing really on how schools can support the mental health and needs of students. And a few years ago, I spoke with Kayla before she was on the panel, that student voice became really important to that conversation. It's always great to have a panel of experts and people who know psychology and talk about things about kids. But what matters most is when we invite kids to talk about kids, right, and what their needs are. So Kayla participated as a student panelist with 3 other students and 3 adults, and spoke very openly, eloquently, and honestly about herself, about her needs and her journey as a student, and working with school counselors and her school counselors and the importance of such, right? So on behalf of the Colts Neck Township Schools, Kayla, on this 19th day in February in the year of 2025, is hereby recognized by the Colts Neck Township Board of Education for her outstanding service as a representative of both Cedar Drive Middle School and the Colts Neck Township Schools, for being a student panelist at the Monmouth County School Symposium on Mental Health and Wellness for the Wellness Symposium. Congratulations. like to say anything?
I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak for the needs and the rights of other people, and getting to talk about having anxiety and getting to talk about my experience with having such an egregious thing that constantly consumes my mind. It just felt very open and freeing, and I'm glad that what I had to say contributed to the rights of people who will experience school in the future. And I'm happy that people will eventually be able to be accessible to the care that they need because of what I've done, I guess. Thanks.
Yeah, so there's no liaisons here. Okay. Okay, if you take notice on the presentation, we were doing reports from student representatives. None were able to make it tonight, so obviously we're skipping that. If anybody would like to continue to stay for the meeting, you folks are certainly not, forced to. So if you want to leave now, you're welcome to. If you want to join us, we'd certainly love to have you. And I also just want to say on behalf of the board, we're so proud to have all three of you as students here representing our district. We're very proud. So thank you. Yeah, I know, yeah. I had to keep my tears back, that was so nice, very nice. Okay, moving on, we have one communication, to be noted. Mrs. Reardon had shared a wonderful article with us. She's here tonight. I just want to let you know we do appreciate that article. I know a lot of us read it, and we definitely, take all that into consideration on how to bridge that gap with the COVID losses. So we always thank you for your input. We always appreciate you being here, so thank you. All right, that will move me into my president's report. I apologize, I did not get a chance to print it out, so just bear with me because my eyes on the computer aren't that good. So good evening, everybody. I first want to thank all of our student representatives, I know they weren't here, who continue to work hard and bring about change with their positive ideas and suggestions through our student liaison program. We are looking forward to your continued participation this year along with our Dr. Garibay and I agreed that we would send out surveys to the district so we can garnish feedback from all parents. I know the parents that were there today, there was a lot of parents from the primary and the elementary school, and the problem is mostly in Cedar Drive. So we'd like to incorporate those parents as well because that's where the issue is at hand. So we will be doing that. And we will report back with those findings once they become available. The program was to start this past Tuesday, and I had requested that Dr. Garibay postpone the implementation of it so the board can have a little bit more time to think about it and just evaluate if we wanted to even, start it. So tonight, maybe during old or new business, we'll take a vote just to make sure that everybody agrees that we should put it in place, and then, after that, we'll go from there. Let me see. I'd also like to report that our newsletter is coming along nicely. Mrs. Camera has almost completed the first edition, which will be highlighting some of our students along with the events happening in our district, and she will be speaking on that tonight. We are looking forward to its debut. Our Finance Committee has started meeting to undertake the monumental task of producing this year's budget. I'm confident this team will lead the district to making the best fiscal decisions for the community with an outcome of a zero tax increase for the upcoming year. I know that will be challenging, but I appointed that committee, and I'm completely confident in all four of you that you will find where we can cut, and where we could we can make appropriate fiscal decisions. Moving on. Lastly, our summer bridge program, the bridge interest forms went out today. The other successful year. Dr. Garibay had discussed, briefly with me that she's working diligently to, adjust that budget. I know we touched on that, which we could still provide the best summer bridge program at a reasonable cost to the district. So that basically concludes my report. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Scales with his...
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, we're off to a roaring start. It's been a little eye-opening, I think. I think switching our meetings around to be able to attend the town council meetings and attend the affordable housing committees has been great. There's been some planning board meetings that we've been able to attend as well. And then last week, I released a one-page fact sheet for resident transparency. Released that to just the general public as best we could. I'm going to ask that we put that up on our Board of Education website as well too, so people can reference it as well, if that's possible. But the feedback I'm getting is resounding. I think it's the first time that some of our residents are able to see what the potential impact is going to be, not necessarily from the student impact, but the tax impact. I think the student impact, as we've seen, is a little bit up for debate, right? There's been a lot of stuff. You sent me a beautiful email. I haven't had a chance to respond to that, but I swear I'll go through it, I promise. So, but it's good because that's triggering some back and forth of the numbers that we've got as well too. So there's a couple studies that we have to go through. We did an independent study that was just based off of regular studies that I've seen across the country, and then comparing that to Colts Neck, and that gave us essentially a tax base that we can expect from the town. As you know, there's a large amount of revenue that comes from our town. Taxes were increased anywhere between 20 to 30% in the last 2 years here in town as well. So we're confident with the amount of funds that we've got, and then the funds that we should obtain from the Levana Square to help us with any sort of infrastructure. I think the most important piece of that too is, and again, thanks to Dr. Garibay for giving that as well, it shows us the impact of how many students that the school can take without being over capacity. Because what that'll do is it'll give us a good idea to figure out, well, how much can we take without having to look for other additions to the school? And I think that's essentially what's on everyone's mind, right? What is the impact going to be as far as infrastructure to the schools? And then again, you've heard me, been pretty loud about the, not having trailers and things like that from previous experiences that I've had as well too. So I'm happy to report our resolution that we put out to the public. We've gotten great responses. There's been some media outlets that have picked it up as well too. And what it did is, again, it's as I like to say, friction creates energy, as we remember from science class. So that friction has created a lot of responses from people that have normally had a little bit more of a nonchalant attitude when it comes to what this housing impact would be. So again, we've created an alert, we've created a strong foundation for all of us as a board, but more importantly for everyone in the town to be on the same page. We've called upon experts, tax experts, we've called upon real estate experts and other people in town if they can provide their expertise for us as well, because I want this to be a truly sort of cohesive project where everyone in town is looking forward to it. And just to be clear, just so everyone is aware, is we're not combating the affordable housing. What we need to do is just make sure that we are looking more for a one-to-one transition with the affordable housing. Mr. Scarpa and I, we had the great opportunity last week to tour Soldier On, a facility in Tinton Falls with Mr. O'Brien in town, as we all know, who loves to attend our meetings as well. So we had a great, it was about 2 hours or so, we were able to tour that facility to just look at what other options there are for affordable housing, just so we can try to avoid that 5-to-1 ratio, right? There's, as you attend these town planning meetings, you'll see that there's a lot of developers just licking their chops, and Colts Neck has a target on their back. And again, above my pay grade, but I'm going to try to do everything that I can to just provide as much data and as much information as possible. But again, long story short, we're off to a great start, and as you know, I'm here if anyone has any questions, and I'll keep reporting now that we have a spot here on the agenda. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. I just wanted to ask a question. I actually know that facility. I pass by quite often. It's a beautiful facility. And I would certainly, I think most of the community certainly would love to have affordable housing for our veterans. Why wouldn't the town want to go down that route? Is there a reason why they wouldn't, or is there, you know?
We're not sure. Again, it's not something that, again, a comment was made at the town council meeting, which was a little bit alarming, which was, it was more of a, they were using the term separation of church and state as a joke, just to explain that, the town council, their responsibility is for the town. It's not necessarily to report numbers to the Board of Education to help us with, and we disagree with that, right? So what our focus is going to be is to look at these options, to educate ourselves on facilities like that, so we can then go back to the town council and the planning board and then present what we think are adequate solutions that are going to benefit the schools, benefit the infrastructure. So we have a lot of work to do. We're trying to educate ourselves on those options, but ideally what we would like to do is, if there's going to be other seats on the subcommittee of the planning board, which we hope to be members of as well, we're going to be presenting these solutions just so there's, again, more of an outside-the-box look at it. But like you said, I think that was the first thing that Mr. Scarpa and I saw when we were there. We're like, wait a minute, we've got a base that is here in town. This is going to be something that could be substantially just to give back to the community, but also really just put a rubber stamp on the Colts Neck's identity, which is half of our property is in a base. So we're going to bring it back to the town, and we'll see how it goes.
I appreciate both of you going out and researching that,
Yep.
and I certainly hope that the town can lean towards that. I think it would be a fantastic
Yeah.
option. So,
Agreed.
thank you to the both of you.
Yep.
Actually, can I just,
yes,
yeah, I
I'm
just want to
sorry.
ask some
Yes,
questions.
yes, yeah.
So just logistically speaking, Mr. Skills, the Affordable Housing Committee, you guys met as a committee since our last meeting?
We meet as a subcommittee, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So per our bylaws, when a committee is going to meet, there should be an agenda that's set and sent to the full board. This way the full board can kind of comment on it and see what's going on and have an insight as far as what's going on during those meetings. So moving forward, I would really appreciate if when there are going to be those meetings, that the full board is informed and that we have an idea of what's going on. That's just keeping in compliance with our bylaws and also being transparent with the full board so that we're aware of what's going on. Second, when you and Mr. Scarpa went out, were you representing the board or were you just there as private citizens?
Private citizens.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then you stated that you compiled and released a fact sheet. Where was it released? You didn't
At least to the general public.
Okay, on, like, how? You said-
Community page.
Okay, as a private citizen?
As a private citizen.
Okay,
Yep.
so before we go ahead and put that up on the website, I would like to request that the full board review that so we can see what's in it. I think we should be voting on that as a board to be putting it up on the website versus just one board member creating it. And then you mentioned that we did an independent study. Can you clarify who the "we" is in that?
Me, myself, and I.
Okay. And can the board have access to that independent study?
You do have access to it.
Okay, where is that?
It's located in the public. As a private citizen, I presented it to the public, so
Okay.
you have full access to it. Yep.
Okay, I'm not on social media, so
Okay.
would you be able to provide me with a copy of that via email?
Sure.
Or you have my number, I'm sure.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate all of that clarification.
Okay, all right, moving on, we're going to start with the board member liaisons. Mrs. Horowitz, if you'd like to start.
move this. Here we go. So we held our first Parent Advisory Committee 2025 last night and this morning, as Angelique mentioned. We had a really great turnout, and it was really great to meet everybody and hear, different thoughts and concerns. We covered a lot of topics, some of them being social emotional learning program, the cell phone pilot program that Angelique mentioned in the middle school, the use of Chromebooks, specifically in the primary and elementary schools. Both Dr. Garibay and Dr. Beck had some really great insight to share about adding some valuable perspective to the discussion. And additionally, Angelique had a great idea about recognizing and honoring students in a different way in our district, and we'll be working with Dr. Beck on that to see that initiative go forward. There were a lot of meaningful conversations that were had, and we didn't get through nearly most of it.
I know.
But that's just more we get to enjoy for the next meeting, so
Yes.
I look forward to it.
Great. Like you said, there was a lot of meaningful conversation. It was nice to meet. There was mostly, I think I knew one person out of that whole group, or maybe two. So it was nice to, to connect with them. And like Dr. Garibay said, it was kind of long. We had a lot to say, and we only got through, I think, three topics out of
Yeah.
9. So we're going to try to tighten it up. This way, everybody gets a say on those agenda items at the bottom,
Definitely.
So, okay, great, Sarah, thank you. And you could just roll right into the PTO.
Okay, so the book swap is still going on. Donations of age-appropriate books are encouraged, and students will be able to select books on March 5th, and any remaining books will be donated to the library. The readathon is scheduled for February 24th through March 7th. Flyers were sent home, but for additional information and signing up, you can visit the PTO website. The gala invitations were mailed out a few weeks ago with the RSVP date approaching. If you want to provide your RSVPs you could either drop them off at 3 Peppermill Lane, or you can mail them in. They're also having new merchandise for our spirit wear available soon with links. Hopefully we'll get that relatively soon. They'll be included, they're including tank tops and shorts, and it's always, the spirit stuff is really nice, so I'm sure it'll be great. And lastly, if you don't receive PTO emails, you can always join, and you can find out information on membership on their website.
Okay, both of my mics have, it's on now. I'm having problems with this. This is not charged properly, but, okay, great, Sarah. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to the Colts Neck Township School Newsletter. Mrs. Camera? Oh, thank you.
Mike. Okay, so it's finalized. Let's plan for release Monday, February 24th, if that works for
Great.
everyone.
Yeah, awesome.
Along with highlighting different student liaisons and a Board of Education member, Brian recently suggested including a military connection in our next issue, starting in spring. So I was thinking like the Patriot Report, where we could honor service, leadership, and education. And I'm just really excited to see this grow as we, collectively gather new ideas. So I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, me too, me too. Okay, Mr. Rugnetta, I don't know if he could hear me. Yes, if you'd like to do your liaison report?
Sure. I just have a couple of updates or reminders. Baseball and softball registration is still available for children 4 to 16 years old. For baseball, 4 to 5-year-olds will be T-ball, and for softball, 4 to 6-year-olds will be T-ball. Opening day will be April 5th for both, and it appears baseball will go through June 21st, and softball will go through June 28th, plus playoffs. And there is also a 6-week preseason clinic for softball starting March 1st. And the other thing, I'll go to coltsnecksportsfoundation.com for more information, and each sport has their own page on that website, as well as their own contact email on the website as well. And as far as our schools are concerned, the Cedar Drive Middle School Spring Musical is right around the corner next month. They're performing Matilda on the 14th of March at 7 p.m. and the 15th of March at 2 p.m. And April 1st, April Fool's Day, will be the Hanover Road spring concert with the band, the elementary school band performing, and both choirs from the primary school and elementary school performing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Regnata. We appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Walsh, if you can do your seniors report, please.
Okay, seniors are going to be invited to our school play dress rehearsal. Matilda, thank you, Dr. Garibay, for connecting with Mr. Chabelle, our president of the Senior Citizen Organization, along with, goodness gracious, the vice president, Nancy Walton. So, Dr. Garibay sent out an invitation. It's Matilda. They put on a wonderful play. I'm looking forward to attending opening night. The last musical was fantastic. So the seniors will be, I think you already have a response. They are attending, and it's fantastic. I really appreciate it. I think it's going to be a great connection having them on our school campuses and supporting our school district. And you're not paying the price of a Broadway ticket. So thanks again for your work and Dr. Rigby.
Okay, I apologize, Mr. Scarpa and Mrs. Camera. I skipped over you. I'm really blind. I'm so blind, so it's difficult to read the agenda sometimes. Yeah. I have.
That's all right. So Ms. Camera, Mr. Scales, and I attended a township meeting on February 12th. It was a very interesting meeting and a good meeting. Affordable housing, as Mr. Scales discussed, was first and foremost on the agenda, with a lot of good information received. A lot of actionable items resulted in the communication by Mr. Scales after the meeting. Mr. Scales and I both spoke at the township meeting to reinforce the message for clear and actionable data to be shared when available with the board, so that we can best prepare for the expected influx of students in the coming years. So all in, it was a good dialogue. It was a good opportunity to educate and to carve out some of the channels that we're going to be expecting in 27 and on. So all in, a good meeting. And thanks again to the combination of our schedule with their schedule so that we can afford this opportunity. So,
Great. Thank you, Brian. Mrs. Cameron, did you want to add anything? Okay, I just want to make sure we don't miss anybody. Okay, moving on to Naval Weapons Station Earl, Mrs. Scarpa and Mrs. Ramirez. You're welcome to.
Sure, I'll give it a start. We're meeting with the Naval Weapons Station on Friday, March 21st. Thank you, Dr. Garibay, for setting that up at 2 p.m. to tour the base and
Just the stakeholder.
oh, a stakeholder meeting. Okay. Which is basically support our families and students here. The next Board of Education newsletter will feature a student spotlight that that Phyllis mentioned in our quarterly communication. And this is an opportunity to sort of highlight unique students, that, hey, listen, look at this, let's tell their story. So we figured that let's choose 1 or 2 students from the Naval Weapons Station to specifically highlight in this feature. Share some pictures, share some stories, and we're excited to extend this to the larger student base as we proceed forward with our newsletter. So very excited about that. There is a science opportunity with a naval base. Monmouth University currently has a program that works with the base to develop and maintain oyster reefs. These are natural defenses while restoring their environment, and oysters are an ecosystem engineers. They're very unique creatures. So the thought is to work with our student liaisons to see if there's an interest in these programs. Perhaps we can have the students from Monmouth University visit our schools and present this program to the students at a lunch and learn. This came out of a conversation that I was having separately with Monmouth University, and then the bells and whistles went off, and lo and behold, that they have a program with Naval Weapons Station Earl. We'd love to speak to our liaison about that, and maybe we can work on something in that space. I know field trips could be expensive, but maybe we can get someone from Monmouth University into our schools to speak about the oyster program. Something I'm noodling. We'll figure that out. Work with the affordable housing opportunities of interest. Naval Weapons Station Earl supports an honor guard detail. These servicemen and women provide a sacred right to all eligible veterans to receive military funeral honors at the end of their life. At the Naval Weapons Station, a select group of dedicated sailors maintains a tradition of honor and respect to those who served the United States Navy and to loved ones left behind. So again, the bells and whistles are going off if we can work out a program where we actually have some qualified affordable housing in the veteran space. Maybe we create an interplay with the weapons station and bring on forth a service that they already provide to our newly built housing opportunities. Again, some opportunities in this space. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Ramirez?
No, Brian went over everything. Thank you.
Okay, all right, moving on to the state and county school boards. Just have a couple things. The school boards has 9 statewide training programs available starting April 4th. Any board member that's interested is welcome to register. I know sometimes that can be difficult. Mr. Marasco always offers assistance, with registering, so you're more than welcome to reach out to him if you have any questions. As you know, we get all the school board emails, so you can find those courses in those emails. Also, the New Jersey School Boards is calling for entries for Innovations in Special Education Award for 2025. I know we touched base, Phyllis had sent an email. Special Ed Week is May 12th through the 16th. The entries must be received by March 21st. I'd love to have Dr. Garibay submit an entry form on our behalf, highlighting one of our many special education programs. I certainly think we would have a great chance of winning because our programs are absolutely fantastic. So if you're willing to do that for us, we certainly would appreciate it. Yeah.
An award for the district? Yes, sign me up. We're good.
Okay. All right. So
Twist my arm.
that's great. So we're going to be moving forward with that. And just lastly, I just want to remind the board members, especially the new ones, to make sure that you all have your new board member training before that expires. I know the date's coming up. Your financial disclosures, I actually had an issue with mine. I think we have till April, I believe, to hand that in. I'm going to try to do it within today or tomorrow, but just a reminder for everybody to make sure that you're up to date with all your training requirements. Okay, let's see. Moving on, we're going to give the floor to our superintendent for her superintendent report. You want to use mine?
Maybe. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Volpe. The first thing I just want to do before I jump into the report is that as we're going through the new format of the agenda, and you look at it and twice check it and 3 check it, when we move into action items, we'll actually be voting on action items 1 through 6 because an information item that appears is our very generous mini grants, the PTO mini grants that go forward, and that actually needs to be accepted and approved by the Board of Education for as applicable funds. So when we make that motion, it'll be a motion for items 1 through 6 under action items. Okay. It's currently included underneath information items, so I just wanted to make that known.
Can you just remind me in case
I certainly
missed it?
will, absolutely. I also wanted to just take a minute to really celebrate the children that we honored, and thank you, the board, for taking the opportunity to do that. It's not easy for kids to get up and try out and play their instruments and be committed, and it's really a celebration. And when our students, who, remember, aren't high school students, they're 14 years old, maybe 15 at most when they're leaving us, and they're out there trying out, whether it be for plays or they're trying out for musicals, and they're representing us on a larger stage, there's a really big sense of pride that comes along with that, and I'm just proud of those young ladies for doing that. And in that moment with the Monmouth County Schools partnership, when I tell you that Kayla shined, she shined. What with her articulation that was demonstrated here was represented and resonated. And I had several people from that night reach out to me, say, "Are you sure that young lady's in 8th grade?" And I said, "She absolutely is," and she makes Cedar Drive proud. So thank you for always, on behalf of the staff, always supporting those things that push kids and give them opportunities to thrive in multiple environments, regardless of what their interests are, and allowing us to expose them to new interests because as they're developing who they are as people, which is great. So I just want to thank you for that. For my last president's report, superintendent's report. No offense. No offense. No. From my last superintendent's reports, it's a busy time of year. We're Mr. Marasco and I are deeply involved on a daily basis of articulation with our principals, our department managers with regards to the budget development, sharing information as it comes. Some of it will be sent through the ad hoc finance committee. Some of it will be shared in the weekly updates for the board. So it's a process. We're also coming to that point in year where Mr. Marasco and I and many of us have one foot in the 24-25 school year and the other foot in the 25-26 school year. So you'll see that on tonight's agenda, there is a recommendation for the first part of the 25 25-26 calendar. So that is so we can start planning vacations and things, whatever families do moving forward into next year. But then also taking feedback, because one of the things that's in this year's calendar are our spring conferences, right? And through the Parent Advisory Committee and through in working with our teachers and administration, we want to revisit that next year. We know that half days can sometimes be difficult for parents to manage, and it is feedback. So we do, after this year's fall conferences, which are spring conferences, excuse me, which are next week, we're going to send a survey out to our parents and our teachers and say, like, listen, is this something with the availability of communication, ongoing communication between teachers and parents and emails and calls and things that can happen, do we still want to dedicate that time in the calendar? And we can revise it if that's something that moving into next year we don't necessarily need to do. On the school calendar, you also see that there are snow days, emergency days. They used to be called snow days, and emergency closure days, because when you have to close for wind and power and things, it's not a snow day, which I'm going to bring back to this school year, which is right now we've had some good luck with regards to inclement weather. This year in the 24-25 school year, there are 3 emergency days built in. So we'll be monitoring that, and by the end of March, beginning of April, there'll be conversations and recommendations for the board to where those 3 days are going to get taken back. So whether they come off the end of the year or it comes off, sometimes we go for the Friday before Memorial Day, different things like that. But hoping we get through March. Sometimes March can be a little challenging, as we've seen in past years. So we'll get, once we get to about the end of March, that decision with that. But stay tuned for a change if we're able to give those 3 days back, because we build in those 3 days when we can. And then we get them back. On the agenda, as I said, for the action item, I just want to extend my sincerest appreciation and gratitude for the PTO, as always, with regards to the mini grants. You can see that's a pretty big number of $24,988 that's afforded to our teachers to provide additional things to students in the classrooms. There's an application process that begins very early on. It is extremely organized and inclusive. They ask for a very thorough review in terms of how it matches with our curricular needs, supporting environments, class trips, assemblies, all of these things are represented in there. So I just want to extend my sincerest thanks and appreciation for all that they do to fundraise, because that's a direct, this action item on the agenda, tonight's agenda, is a direct reflection of their hard work and their commitment and giving back to our students in every way what they do. So I can't thank them enough on behalf of the district. Okay, I'm going to slide in working with President Volpe on the conversation about the pilot program, the cell phones at Cedar Drive Middle School. So, and then you can either take questions or whenever you feel it's appropriate, we can chime in it. So I'm going to, once upon a time, when cell phones became a thing in schools and students became frequent users of cell phones that were not flip phones, when they were first phones, there was a policy that was implemented, okay, and that policy is from 2013. That policy was about that no phones were to be used in school, they had to be hidden away, they have to be on the person, you can't take them out. That was the 2013 policy. 2016, a new policy came out that relates to electronic recording devices that are not permitted and have to be stowed away. So when you merge the two of the technology evolution of the cell phone, right, which then became capable of recording devices, our policies, our practices deferred to the 2016, which meant that cell phones with recording devices had to be away and stored into lockers. The reality is, and this is the reality, the policy states they're away and in cell phones. The reality is they're not, right? They're carried on their persons for a multitude of reasons, and it's a distraction. It's a distraction in school, and our job as educators is to always provide the most conducive learning environments to support the learning of students. And when and where we can eliminate distractions in that, or things that may compromise those learning environments, we should be diligent in doing so. That's really what we should be doing. And so a few years ago, and really it is probably about 2 years ago, some of the teachers at Cedar Drive recognized the fact that students were carrying their cell phones on them. And remember that Cedar Drive just like in every other building in the district, you strive to create a culture where students feel a sense of belonging, they contribute to the community, you want to have a good rapport. You don't want to be constantly disciplining students for their use of their cell phones, right? Which is innately now becomes such an important part of them, you know, and connection, as you hear. So in our physical education department, they also recognized that the cost of a cell phone was at jeopardy when the students are running around playing volleyball, playing cedar ball, whatever it is they're playing, that there was a potential for damages. So they implemented the practice of anyone who did not have their recognizing, you may not have put your cell phone in your locker, could you please put it in a pocket? And the way I can describe it best is that you ever see the door hangers of shoes where there's multiple I mean, that's the best way I can describe it visibly, and I'm happy to bring in a model if anybody wants to see it as well, but that's really what it is. And so that is available, and students come into the class, they hang their cell phones. It is visible to them, but is not accessible to them during the physical education period, okay? And that goes for if they leave to use the restroom or anything like that. Because another common occurrence, not just responding in the moment in class, if it's vibrating or they're checking to see who's sending it, it's also something that we've seen recurring, the calls to go to the bathroom, the calls to respond, those types of things where, you know, that's tempting them to leave the classroom and to meet up with their friends. We understand that. So 2 other teachers in the district also adopted this as part of their classroom practice, as part of their classroom routines. You walk in the classroom, you put it in. So in phys ed and 2 classrooms, this has been occurring. So Cedar Drive has a culture and has a rapport with its teachers where they kind of level set and say, all right, where are we going with the year? And multiple times, a very similar and recurring concern of the staff is student use of cell phones, right? And if they spent all day reprimanding students for having them on their persons, can't we find another way to not just embrace the culture of what the reality is, while also protecting the learning environment, you know, and compromising with it. Building in an opportunity, which we had it out actually at the second meeting today, which is The Anxious Generation, which is a book that talks about the addictive natures of cell phones, giving them a tool to empower them to physically disconnect from a cell phone and allow themselves to be present in the moment of their instruction, right? While still having visible sight to their phone. So I think in conversation with the teachers, there was with the administration and support saying, can we expand this to almost like a consistent practice throughout the district and just Cedar Drive, to try it? Can we just try it to implement it school-wide? It is not in any way, shape, or form trying to take a cell phone and away from anyone or privacy. It's giving them, it's asking them to disconnect from their phone, having it still visible if there's a comfort level to it, and then them being able to take it at the end of the class and take it to the next class with them. So no one is asking them to turn it in. We know that we want to get feedback from our staff, our parents, once we implement it. But I think one of the things that we encourage here is us trying new things for the betterment of kids and seeing if we can solve a problem in a realistic and compromising type of way that fits the reality of a situation. So that's the approach, and that's what was the asking for the board. And then working through the policy chair and the board to say, all right, so how would we adopt the policy too? Because we are, through a pilot, working outside of the policy for it, so we want to try it, and we want to see it, and then through the feedback make a final decision if this is something we want to go forward with, or it's not. Well, if we get feedback that says, you know, I think a good point, and I'm sorry to bring this up, but a good point in the parent advisory committee that we heard back was also a situation where we don't want it to ever become combative, because I think that's another level of concern where they're saying, well, what if a child doesn't put it in the pocket or refuses to? Well, that's a different story. You know, you've got to deal with that from a code of conduct point of view. But we also want to be sensitive. If a child does have anxiety, does have issues, we're going to encourage through the communication from the administration of the building to the parents to say, let's talk that through, right? And let's have a conversation about how we can get them to the point. And never ever has a child, you know, asked a teacher or a parent to say, like, can I please, I need to text my mom for this, right? Or I need to, and I think that's the kind of culture we have, that if they need to get in contact as a mom of two, stepmom of three. I understand that. I made a joke during the parent advisory. My 23-year-old was flying home from Dallas today from work. And like a fool, I'm watching him cross the country on my United app. There's nothing I'm going to do if something happens to him, but I felt the need, watching the little plane come up from Dallas to Newark, but I felt the need to be watching him. I understand, and we actually even said sometimes I think our need to connect might be bigger than theirs, but understanding it's also reciprocal, it's a direct line. And I appreciate all of that because it's a mom's perspective, parent's perspective, it absolutely safety and security, all of those things, we get it. So that's why I think we're trying to also maybe say, maybe the locker is we can move from that and have them still hear it, but invite them and ask them to detach from it. That's what we're asking them to do in this process. And we want to try it. You know, we have a small microcosm of a pilot that has been working successfully without any type of thing. And I think the feedback from Mr. Mercer's here with us tonight. And so if we were able to kind of move forward and look at it and say, all right, what's the feedback? How did we run? What were the problems that we had? What are the parents saying? What are the students saying? What are the staff saying? And then come back and make a final decision. So that's the ask from the district.
I'd like to make a comment. I don't want to carry on too much with this to make the meeting brief. I just wanted to give my viewpoint on this briefly. I know I said it 2 meetings already. Obviously, I agree. We're here to learn and educate our kids. I don't want my daughter as versus anybody else texting and distracting the class. The reason I had an issue with this is you know, like we discussed, there's kids with severe anxiety. And Mallory, I think you were here, and Tara, we had a great discussion, and they all feel they support the program. The reason being kids with anxiety, that is their one connection to their mom or dad. And the other thing was, like, knowing my husband for so many years being a police officer, we have experienced a lot of tragic things. And knowing that my kid may be in school and something horrific happening, knowing that she's a phone call away. These things matter to me. And, you know, there's some young ladies, you know, have menstrual accidents, and they don't want to go to the school nurse. They're embarrassed. They want to call their mom, Mom, I need pants. Mom, I need this. A lot of people, you know, don't realize there's that, like, privacy issue. But I do respect the fact that I do not want our teachers to be working double time and spending their entire day reprimanding our kids for cell phone usage. So I'm kind of torn. I do want to speak for the parents that don't agree with the policy, although it was, you know, predominantly you guys all support the policy. Once again, you're younger children compared to, you know, some of us on here. We have mostly older kids. Well, not everybody. I'm sorry, Sarah and Jess have younger kids. But I just wanted you to hear, you know, my point. I certainly don't, you know, want to cause the district to do any extra work, but I just wanted you to hear from some of the parents why they would want their kids to have their cell phone, just so you hear 2 sides of the story. So that's all I wanted to say. And like I said, you know, if the board wants to move forward and allow the district to implement it at this time, I'm certainly okay. I think it's a fair shot to get the feedback, see how it works, and whatever you guys decide is fine. So we got to make a decision tonight so we could move forward and not hold up the implementation. So
I have a question. Have there been any exceptions made in the pilot program where the students with anxiety and stuff like that that might need that connection? Has that come up and a one-off made the exception made?
here.
So to your point, we're always working one-on-one with what students' needs are, and if there is a need, or if a child actually has to leave and go, you're taking your phone and maybe going to the nurse or going to another place, if I have to, there's an emergency. We work with kids, you know, and so we recognize them. So is something directly coming to mind? No. Am I 100% confident of that I can say yes to your question? Yes, I can.
I like the idea of, before we implement the program, to actually survey the parents of Cedar Drive Middle School, and then based on the survey, make a decision about the pocket policy. I'm not for or against it. Really would just like some data from the parents about their concerns. I definitely like the idea that we are being flexible. We understand that kids are not keeping it in their lockers, and I think, changing that policy is important. Would the first step be maybe letting them keep it in their Chromebook cases, and then as a second step, the pocket policy? Like there might, it might be something we want to look at, like step 1, step 2, depending upon students who are too immature or don't want to follow the simple policy of keeping in their Chromebook case. So my only concern with the pocket policy is if all these students have a different number in each class, right? Each period, sometimes you're number 18, sometimes you're number 17. There's a chance that a student could accidentally take someone else's phone. So it's just something that was like my biggest concern when I heard about it. So that's my only real concern. But I do agree with Angelique. Our number one purpose is to educate our students. And I definitely wouldn't want the same thing. Teachers don't want to be reprimanding constantly. Like that takes the joy out of their job, and it really hurts the relationship with the students. And that before they're learning, you have to have those relationships. So I'm just in favor of first starting with a survey and going from there.
I was just going to ask, kind of on what Phyllis was saying, when the cell phones are quote unquote taken from the students, are they being asked to go up and put their phone in their respective pocket? Okay, so they're not giving them to the teacher who's then putting them in the pocket. And then is it also the same in the reverse? Are they going up and just taking them out of their pocket? Or, okay, so maybe to solve what Phyllis was saying, we could do something where the cell phones are handed directly to the teacher. I know that puts a little bit more ownership on them. And then the teacher's putting it in the pocket. And then same thing before they leave. I'm sure that takes up some time during the class, but it would also eliminate someone's cell phone being taken by the wrong student. We know how teenagers can be. We know that there's been issues before, not only in our district, but in others where there can be bullying and harassment and whatnot. And I would hate to see someone's cell phone taken, and then it creates another issue for our district going forward. So there could be something like that. And again, if it's numbered, also like Phyllis was saying, then in one classroom they have one number, another classroom they have another number. So maybe it's a consistent number assigned to that student. So even though those pockets then might seem a little disorganized when they change classes, but it could be, that's their specific number. I think there's ways around this that could maybe work out some of those concerns, and maybe you already have some thoughts on that as you shake your head at me.
I think, again, I think all of this is good feedback for us. I don't know to delay it is going to give us information that we wouldn't get. Do you know what I mean? And I understand and it's a tricky place because parents own the phone. There aren't kids in middle school for the most part, who own their phone. So it's a parent's piece of property, that they're allowing their child to bring to school. But at the same time, right now, that property is supposed to be in a locker, and it's not, right? So we're trying to protect the property, right, and saying what we're doing. So I think it's a double-edged sword. I think the teacher's input in this is equally as valuable as the parents, because the parents are going to respond, possibly, and I don't ever want to speak for anyway, could potentially be in favor of it because they want that disconnection, as we heard in the parent advisory. But I also understand the perspective of them saying, like, that, listen, we bought that phone, that's your phone, and they don't have a right to take it, or whatever the case may be. So I think we're just trying to find that balance, and I don't know, I respect whatever role or whatever direction the board wants to go in. I'd like to try it and see what the feedback is, and then implement things, and I don't know that we could plan for every safeguard of what would happen. I think we can deal with it as it's evolving, like we have with many pilots that we've done. That's just my,
I'm sorry, one more. What would be the pilot? Like, how long would it be? 30 days, 60 days, 14 days? Like, what are we thinking?
I think we could try it, and I could give reports to the board, at the board meetings going forward. We could try it for the remainder of the year. We could try to go, whatever the time frame we want to do.
And if at any point we decided, from feedback that we were just receiving, even via board email, was terrible and we were like, all right, we need to put a halt to this, we could just do that at one of our meetings. We could vote on that.
Right, because remember, the board policy is still the board policy, right? That's why this is the conversation of the board level, because the board policy, you could say, like, listen, it's there, right? So we're actually looking to say, we want to pilot something that is outside the realm of the board policy.
Okay, if the board, we're going to make a decision tonight regardless. If we move forward with it and we agree to give it a shot, how quick would the survey go out to the parents to get the feedback about it?
We send out communication to the parents first about that it's going to happen.
Okay,
You know,
all
and I
right,
think that through that, we could invite them to say, if you have any questions, like we do always, if you have any questions or concerns, please let us know. So that communication will go out first, and then we could follow up in 2 weeks. A Google survey takes this much time to do. Hey, how are we doing? You know, and just get that how are we doing? It's a quick survey, so we could do that, you know, every 2 weeks, every month. We could do it in a month, and then report back as we're following it, you know, as a progress.
I'm out of battery, but what I'd recommend, like, we just don't overthink it. We have to act quick.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
So
because-
I'm in favor, although I'm not in favor of taking the phones, I'm in favor of
Yeah.
trying it. So I think we should just do a quick vote so we can move on with the meeting. If anybody
We have
has
to-
anything else to say, I'd certainly listen. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mr. Regnetta. I did not hear you. Sorry about that.
I just wanted to clarify one quick point. If, God forbid, there is an incident, and the phones are in their lockers, and I'm just talking about the very small likelihood, very, very small likelihood of the worst incident happening, that the phones are in the lockers, that it makes it virtually impossible for the kids to be able to get to that phone to notify the parents that they're okay. I'm just putting that one thing out there.
I agree. That was one of my concerns, so I appreciate your feedback on it as well. Yes, hopefully that would never be the case, but people, you know, realize, I think earlier in the year, the high school had an incident, and I know a parent that has a child there, and the fact that that child was able to call during that lockdown was just worth $1 million, that mother knew, God, my kid's okay, I just heard from her. Like I said, the chance of that happening, but you just never know in this world, so.
And we just, it's harder for the state to change a policy once we have a new one in place, and Murphy wants to take them away completely. So that's an infringement on freedom, and it's illegal. So before he gets his hand in everything, we have to do something. Just so I think it's a happy medium, so it's at least there, because he's coming for the cell phone. So
All right, so let's move forward. We'll take a vote. Everybody want to implement it, you know, just to see how it goes.
I just wanted to add one thing, though.
Yeah?
that I actually have a different take on what Vinny was saying. As much as I agree, I actually think that it hurts us to have the kids, if
sorry.
there is some situation at the school, to be texting their parents right away. Because what happened at the high school was there was a lot of misinformation and a lot of gossip without actually knowing what happened. So a lot of times I
Correct.
think it makes more sense for them not to have access to, you know, there is, and let me know if I'm wrong, but there is a phone in the classroom. So if they need to reach anybody, that's, you know, you have a teacher there to help you along with that. But I think children just automatically texting their parents like, oh my God, there's this happening, that's happening. That's how a lot of misinformation gets, you know, gets thrown around. So it's something to consider.
Okay, anybody else before we do a straw poll, so we could wrap it up?
If the Google survey is so quick, I don't see the harm of just implementing the survey, letting us know the feedback within, 48 hours and waiting a week to, to start the policy based on the parents' information. I just think that's fair to the parents of the middle school students.
Well, we'd have to wait till the next meeting then to do a straw poll then to start it, right? Because we've sent out the Google survey and then we'd have to wait until our next meeting before we could start it, yeah. So the Google
Couldn't
survey
we
can go
just see
quickly.
if the parents are in favor? Couldn't the policy start as soon as we have the data?
We'd have to direct it. So it would still be 2 weeks.
Well,
We could have the survey
based on the parent data,
vote for the survey, you mean?
right, we vote for the survey, and based on the results of the survey, it's implemented
If
it's
the
implemented.
majority of the survey results, so, 51% say yes, then we
Then we
move forward
implement
with
it, let's say, starting Monday of next week.
I think that's fair. This way it speeds it up a whole week, and everybody will be happy then.
So just for clarification, you don't have to vote on a survey. Let's say we can do that by ourselves. There's no straw poll on that.
I meant
Yeah,
we're
the
voting
preference,
for
why? Right.
In order to implement the
And-
program, the parents of Cedar Drive Middle School, we need 51% to want to implement this program.
So then I would also ask that I'm also going to facilitate a staff survey, so that the
We're
board can
assuming
have
the
both,
staff
so
wants
that,
it
so
based
the
on-
board, so that the one, there's equal representation of those two stakeholder groups, that can be looked at.
Right, but are we assuming the staff wants it? I mean, isn't that the assumption?
Yes.
That's why we're-
Yeah, I just want to make sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so moving forward, we're going to take a straw poll. The survey will go out first. We'll take a straw poll, like Phyllis said, 51% or whatever the majority, and then whatever the data reads, we'll implement it right away, or we won't. Everybody clear? And everybody agree?
Yeah.
Okay, fair? Okay, all right, let's move on so we can,
Roll call.
yeah, we could just move on. Okay, we're
we
going to
voting
take
on that?
notice of, yeah, sorry, I'm sorry. Okay, we're going to take notice of the information items listed. We do have to, you said about accepting the grants, so how would you like me to do that?
Motion to accept action items 1 through 6.
Okay. A motion to accept action items 1 through 6, if we could get a roll call on
No,
those.
wait,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Comments from attending constituents.
Oops, I missed the most important thing of the evening, yes. Let's open the floor to comments tonight. If anybody wants to get up, please state your name and address for the record, and you're welcome to do so at this time. Okay, nobody? All right, we're going to close public comment. All right, if we could resume and get a roll call on those action items.
Yes, and it's 1 through 6, 6 being the resolution on accepting the PTO mini grants.
Correct.
Mrs. Camera,
Yes.
Mrs. Horowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Arrico,
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez.
I just want to say thank you so much to the Colts Neck PTO for the mini grants. This is always just so nice to see. It's amazing to have that much money for our schools to be able to utilize. So I know in previous years, we've done some good things with these mini grants, and so just thank you so much for that. And yes.
Thank you. Mr. Rignetta,
Yes.
Mr. Scales,
Yes.
Mr. Scarpa,
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carried.
Okay, so now did all that, we're at buildings. Okay, can I get a motion to move items number 1 under buildings and grounds?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, can I get a roll call, please?
Any comments or questions?
I'm sorry, any comments? Questions? No, sorry about that. Okay.
Buildings and grounds, Mrs. Camera,
Yes.
Mrs. Horowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Arrico,
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez.
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta,
Yes.
Mr. Scales,
Yes.
Mr. Scarpa,
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe,
Yes,
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carried.
great, thank you. Can I get a motion to move the one item under curriculum, please?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, can I please get a roll call?
Mrs. Camera,
Yes.
Mrs. Horowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Arrico,
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez,
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta,
Yes.
Mr. Scales,
Yes.
Mr. Scarpa,
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carried.
Okay, under finance.
Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry, it keeps dying.
Yeah, mine, they're
I know,
going out of
I'm
battery.
sorry.
Yeah.
I have it on the whole time. I like to keep mine on the whole time, and you guys are welcome to do so, just so I don't forget to put it on. But this one is not working that well. Okay, under finance, this year, due to the fact that we needed a little more time on some of the items, we were going to table items number 2 And number 3, until the March 5th meeting. If everybody's okay with that, we'll take a vote to table those, just to give the members of the board that were unable, they were pretty lengthy reports. I know some had concerns that reached out to me before the meeting. So to make it fair for everybody, if we can take a vote to table those until that meeting.
Can I just ask a question for that?
Sure.
Are we able to do that? Because don't we have to approve it within 60 days, and it was for December 31st, or am I not counting correctly?
That is the standard to accept the reports. I mean,
Because that puts us over the 60 days, correct? March 5th? From
it
December
does, but
31st?
I suppose if there's an actionable table, it has to be accepted that way.
Yes.
Okay.
I do
just wanna
respectfully have a
make sure we're in
question.
compliance.
No, yeah, she actually went over that it did have to be 60 days. I was aware of that, but like I said, I can't forcefully have members vote on stuff that they're unprepared for, so.
Of course.
I'd like to table it, take a vote to table it, and we'll go from there.
Yes.
That's fair?
Yes,
Yeah?
that's fair.
Mr. Rico, okay. All right, so a vote,
Yeah,
Yes.
you said 6, right?
oh, yeah, I didn't, did you,
Well, first,
yes, I was calling for a motion to table.
so,
Do we have
Yes.
other comments first, or do you want to go right to tabling?
You
No
can,
discussion at the table.
Okay.
all right, so was there a second to table it?
Second.
It was put forth by Mr. Rico.
Sorry about the confusion. Okay.
I'm sorry, you're tabling number 2.
Number 2 and finance item number 3. And then we'll go back for the other ones.
Is there any unclarity on the resolution itself?
There's no discussion.
Okay.
They made a motion to table, there's no discussion.
Okay.
Okay, so could we get a roll call to table it?
Sure. Mrs. Camera,
Yes.
Mrs. Horowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Arico,
yes.
Mrs. Ramirez,
Yes.
Mr. Regnetta,
Yes.
Mr. Scales,
Yes.
Mr. Scarpa,
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, so we are going to go back to finance again. I need a motion to approve under finance, I'm sorry, just give me a minute to get my eyes straight. Number 4, I'm sorry, did I miss 1, 4, 5, and 6? I apologize. Yeah.
And 7.
motion.
Wait, 7. And 8.
Yep.
And 8.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
And
how
9.
hard is this one down? I'm
there's a
sorry.
9.
And all of the rest.
Mine? Okay.
All but 2 and 3.
Okay, so a
All but
motion
2
to
and 3.
approve those? I apologize, guys, it's
Oh,
very
good.
difficult, my eyes.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, great, can I get a roll call?
Yes, on items
That's okay.
1, 2, 4, 5 through 9. Mrs. Camera,
Yes.
Mrs. Horowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Arico,
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez,
Yes.
Mr. Regnetta,
Yes.
Mr. Scales,
Yes.
Mr. Scarpa,
All right, just to clarify, it's 1, 4, 5 through 9, right? It's not 1, 2, 4, it's 1, 4, 5.
Yeah.
1, 4, 5 through 9,
Yes.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
yes, thank you.
yes. Is that a yes? Mrs. Volpe,
I'm sorry, yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Thank you, the motion carried.
Okay, now we'll be back on track for this. I need a motion to move items under policy, items 1 and 2.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments? No. Okay, if I could get a roll call on those items.
Policy items 1 through 2. Mrs. Camera,
Yes for everything, no for attachment P4.
Mrs. Horowitz,
Yes for 1, 2, and 3, no for 4.
I'm sorry,
P, attachment 4.
you meant attachment, not,
Attachment 4, yes.
thank you. Mr. Arico,
Yes on number 1, on number 2, yes for P3 and no for P4.
Mrs. Ramirez,
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta,
Yes.
Mr. Scales,
Yes for 1, 2, and 3, no to 4.
Mr. Scarpa,
Yes for attachments 1, 2, 3. No for attachment 4.
Mrs. Volpe,
No to P4, yes for everything else.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes for policy 1, 2, and 3, no for 4.
okay. The motion passed with the exception of attachment 4.
Okay, moving on, nothing under negotiation, transportation. Okay, moving down to personnel. I'd like to make a motion, thank you for your help, to move items 1 through 9 under personnel.
Motion.
Motion. Second.
Thank you, Vinnie. Okay, this is pretty lengthy. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments. You're more than welcome to.
I have a quick comment.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank the teachers for their professionalism and commitment to furthering their education. I was very impressed to see teachers that have their master's plus 30 and master's plus 60. So I just wanted to recognize that.
Right, thank you. Anybody else want to make a comment, question? Okay, can I get a roll call?
Personnel items 1 through 9. Mrs. Camera,
Yes.
Mrs. Horowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Rico,
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez,
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta,
Get a recuse from 2 to 4, numbers 2 through 4 due to my employment with the New Jersey Family Leave and Disability, and yes to the rest.
thank you. Mr. Scales,
Yes.
Mr. Scarpa,
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, great, thank you, everybody. We're moving on to our last comments from attending constituents. This will be on all subjects if you have something to say. Once again, state your name and address for the record.
Okay. Hi, Allison Denoya, 4 Westminster Drive. Since you guys did not pass P4, if the public could get a working definition of what parents' rights are, that would be great. Okay? So when you get that together, you let us know what that is so we can all work from the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Okay, anybody else for public comment? All right, we're going to close public comment at this time. We are going to open the floor to any new business at this time. New business?
And new business.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, who said?
That's what, you let Kevin go.
Okay.
Yeah.
You
I'd like
you're a
to-
senior?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all right, I like being a senior. I'd like to maybe have some type of event where we can have the parents that have children in private schools come back to our schools, highlight our successes as a district, highlight our great teachers we have and our special education. Let's attract the students that are attending private schools and have them parents come back to our schools.
That's a great comment. I think, hopefully, when we achieve blue ribbon status, I think people are going to flock here more than they are already. But I, of course, I would like that too. But you know, like I said, that would be an initiative to bring, you know, people back. But I'd certainly, you know, agree if Dr. Garibay would be interested in implementing something like that to engage people to come back. I'm all for it.
I don't know how you would go about that, Doctor, but
I have no idea either.
I think we just need to take up
district to the parents that
an ad out. If we wanted to keep adding kids to our schools, we could keep doing that if we want to. We have a lot of opportunities to do so. Right in the, but
My point is
yeah,
that
I
we
understand.
taxpayers pay a lot of money.
Sure.
$30,000 per
Sure.
student to educate them. Why send them out and pay a double tax?
Sure, and I think it's a really good question, and I never question a parent's decision to send to a private school, right? Some have gone through parochial schools or private schools themselves, and that's the path they choose for their children. We certainly, when students are actually disenrolled by their parents, we do send an exit survey to their parents to try to keep tracking. And sometimes, obviously, you can't force people to answer, and respond to that, but we try to collect that data to reflect on that, the reasons for. Open houses, highlights. I know that, and I think it is in a couple of the magazines, CBA and Rani and Oak Hill take out, have full page articles and things like that are in there. It is a different budget line, but I'm always open to anything, especially when we have our kindergarten previews and we have our preschool. It's a hot commodity when we're bringing in our little ones and parents come. So I'm always open for any ideas to celebrate and highlight our kiddos. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
In that same vein, I'm glad you mentioned a survey. What is the data shown from the surveys?
I think sometimes it's their personal reasons, from whether it is, curriculum based. I think that there's things that they've, from whether it's a religious standpoint or just going back to the concept of parent rights, and public schools have a very comprehensive, exposure to things that, that parents have differences of opinions on sometimes. Sometimes it is about a child's need to be in a smaller environment, and it's focused like that. Whether there was a conflict, of something, we take that, very seriously too as well. So I think that we have, there's a variety of reasons, and then, and we reflect on that. Yeah, but I can provide that. Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Rico, you said you had new business? Yes, so. Oh, here, I'm sorry, you wanted.
Yes. So, this afternoon, roughly, like right around 3 o'clock, we received a late email, I think, regarding the regular action meeting here. We received the PDFs of the board secretary report, the treasurer's report, and it was added to the bold revised agenda. This was really last minute, and at 3 o'clock, about 3 hours before the meeting, it was about 46 pages worth of information that, obviously everyone would want to, or part of the finance committee or the entire board would like to review, and this way being able to vote on it. I think it was really short notice. I don't know, I was working, and by the time I did see the email, it did come in at around 3 o'clock, and it was just too short notice for, I believe, it to be added to the regular action meeting, for vote. So, I mean, and in my opinion, I would like, at least for something like that, at least a day before, if not maybe even 48 hours before, so we could review that, that information with the board secretary's report, the treasurer's report, and, looking over and interpreting that information is, hard enough. So I think at least a 24 to 48 hour window for that information would be great.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And and I think I in the email to the board, the follow-up email after we had heard from, for that, it is lengthy, and it is very small print and very tedious to be going through it, recognizing that. And as I said yesterday, it was in the attachments folder with the minutes that went out in the email that the board received. However, we said that you can also review all the attachments. We didn't identify that was in the attachments folder. So it was available yesterday afternoon. So that was a misstep on our end. We recognized that in the email that I sent following that up. So that we certainly will, absolutely. It was there. And so we hear that. That is, we recognize that, and we always want to provide the board timeliness to be able to review information. So without a doubt.
I have some new business. This is just more of an update. So just before I had thanked the PTO for all their mini projects, all the grants, and we know that the pergola project is something that they are funding. And I had mentioned at the last COW meeting if there was any possibility that the board can set up a Venmo or PayPal account allowing residents to donate directly. And I just wanted to know if we were able to get any more information about that.
I think at the COW, Mr. Maresco and I are going to be presenting some information about the structure of donations. You know, what's the most appropriate from our, you know, we can speak with our auditor who will, you know, like I said, I think I even referenced, we're always open for donations. That's, you know, and we've been beneficiaries before as a district. So it's more about just the way that we want to, is the best way through accounting procedures to be able to set that up for people. So we can share that out at the COW.
Great. Anybody else would like to add new business?
I've got just two things. From just a policy perspective, so again, keeping politics out of the schools is our main focus, but unfortunately we're finding ourselves at the crossroads of a fight between the federal government and the state government regarding an executive order handed down by our president that talks about removing DEI from the schools, right? All of that. So that's a challenging. Oh, keep going. Sorry. It's challenging, and I know it's going to put a strain on you. So
Yeah, why don't you take
so
Mrs. Cameras?
what I would recommend again is we'll work through it to figure out, because ideally what can happen, and I kind of explained it last time, is that when there's an executive order, the threat is that if we're not complying, all of our federal dollars will be removed, right? Flip side of the coin is if we comply with the federal directive, but if you're all familiar with supremacy law, the federal law always supersedes state law, right? But the threat is our governor of the state of New Jersey is willing to reduce our funding in order to fight that funding. So we will be in the crossroads. State funds obviously account for more of our budget than federal funds do, right? So what we need to do is be strategic, because there's a couple policies that it will impact, and we've been proactive as far as verbiage and adjustments. Policy 2260, equity in school and classroom practices. It's what I would recommend, just because of the impact of our resolution on affordable housing, is I recommend that I will draft a resolution for all of our board members to review. And what this resolution ideally will call for is to make sure that our school and our district is not caught up in the crosshairs of the federal and the state fight, right? So what we need to seek is clarity on what those actual penalties would be, the timing of when those penalties will happen, and when and if funds could ever be actually taken away from our schools. Because again, we have a fiduciary responsibility and a policy responsibility to follow federal law. And in some cases, there is some state laws that are instituted that don't necessarily follow federal law, because the federal law is not impacting the state. So I will draft a resolution if you agree, and I can present it to the board ahead of time, and then we can put it on the agenda for the next COW, so we are able to review it.
Sorry, I apologize. We're having a lot of difficulty tonight.
Just want to see what your thoughts will be, because I know you had some questions on the previous resolution. So we need to be, again, on the same page when we send something like this, because the last one, it got some media attention, and it may happen again. You could see what the other school districts are repealing some of the transgender policies. So we're expecting action from the state on those as well too, to appeal the judge's decision. So again, just trying to be, our main focus again, as we've talked, as we were also elected for the board, is to be proactive, not reactive, right? So we need to take a proactive approach and prepare ourselves, very similar how we're approaching with what the impact would be from an affordable housing and a development perspective. We need to take a similar approach with the politics coming from the state of New Jersey. So I'd recommend, again, Dr. Garib, I don't know where we would start, finding that of where that's in the curriculum and all of that, but at least identifying some areas, whether or not it would be a strain on you and the operation to figure out how to do that, and so just wanted to plant the seed and just, and we're all on the same page and we know there's a clear path forward of how we're gonna handle this.
Sure. Do you want me to respond?
Yeah, I'll say something when you're done.
Yeah, the large push that came out last year, it was the equity and education grouping that came out. So there was that's really a main focus of where, those sentiments lay or in writing. The other part is with staff development. There's requirements now with staff development pieces of it that have been incorporated. So those are really the two that come into practices and that are codified in that type of thing.
So I guess I have two questions on that. One would be, why would we draft a resolution versus just updating and amending our policies? What's the push behind the resolutions?
The problem is we'd be in a fight. So for example, unfortunately, our governor is very, we'll call it financially reckless, right? So if we were to make a change to our policy that's not in direct correlation with the state policy, then we're absolutely susceptible to a state lawsuit. So if there's a state lawsuit, then they can pause the funds, and coming into budget season, we'd obviously have to recognize where that is. So my whole point of this is to find out what the penalties would be, when those timing would be, because the resolution will allow us to, it'll protect us, it'll allow us the fact that we're looking into it and that we won't tolerate a fight between the federal government and
Well,
the state
a
government.
resolution's an opinion. And as Angelique pointed out last meeting when I requested there to be our legal counsel involved in the resolution, we don't need legal involved in it. And what you're describing sounds like we would want to be getting legal counsel for a resolution of that nature. So while I know we don't need to have it, a lot of the things that you're saying, oh, it protects us, how do we know that? I would want our legal team and counsel to say, this does protect us, so this is a good idea for your draft, because I don't know that that's true. My understanding is that's not true. A resolution does not protect us. A resolution is an opinion piece. That's why we don't need legal counsel on it.
Correct.
So
It protects us in the court of public opinion.
okay.
So so what happens with a resolution, again, a resolution could be a napkin, right?
Yeah.
But what it does is it alerts our state officials and our federal officials that offer us protection to not move forward with it, because we're essentially giving them. No, it's okay. We're essentially giving them sort of we'll give them a preemptive piece of verbiage that we're going to be proactively looking at this. So then it allows us in, again, the court of law to use that as a reference point in order to delay if there was ever to be a lawsuit or something along those lines. So it allows us to essentially to give you more of an idea. It lays a foundation for legal recourse, where then our attorney also would know what page we're on, and then the other attorneys that are in the state, it perhaps could deter them from suing us as well. So we have to be clear on what we're providing, and there has to be something in writing sent to the public, codified by the Board of Education, for us to ever use that if we were to be sued by the state.
I completely understand what you're saying, and I'm following along. Makes sense. What I would request is that we not only have our legal team involved in it on this time, because if they're going to eventually get a copy of it, and I don't know that we sent them a copy of our last resolution, I think that's wise that we would send them a copy of our last resolution. But also I think that this sounds like something that we should be advocating for then, right? This is why we have our Advocacy and Government Relations Committee. So through the chair, we should be doing more with our legislators, right? We've had before where our legislators come here and we talk with them, we have meetings with them. So maybe instead of drafting a resolution in a silo of one board member, I think we should be doing it as a committee of a whole, in the public, with public input, because we have a responsibility to have input from our stakeholders on how they feel about following along with all of these changes. And then in addition to that, get our legislators, get our senator involved, figure out what they can do for us, and involve them in the resolution. If we're going to be drafting a resolution, I think it even holds more weight if we have some of these individuals who, as you said, can go to bat for us. Let them be involved in it then. See what they say about it. So those would just be my requests, thinking off the cuff here. And again, I'm really going to stress we're a committee of a whole. One board member should not be charged with drafting a resolution and then that being what gets sent out to the full committee of a whole. We should be doing that work in the public, for the public to see, for them to comment on, to see that process. When you're a board of committees, you do these things in small committee meetings behind closed doors, but a lot of work goes into it. It's not something that's just done by one of those committee members and then the other 2 or 3 of them come together and say, yes, we like this, no, we don't. There's work that's done on it, and I think that that work should be done on it in a committee of the whole, and again, with the stakeholders
I'd
involved.
like to comment, I think we should go forward and draft that resolution. We're elected by our residents to be proactive and take the lead and listen to our constituents. That's why we're here. So I'm all in favor of going forward with that resolution.
With what resolution?
And drafting,
Yeah, it's a
Opinion
draft.
piece.
It'll be, that's what that's-
speak for the board.
Yeah. My original point was, because your original comments were, it'll be there, it'll be presented, so it'll, I guess, again, I don't know, the email rules and all that stuff, it's sent to you and then you send it out to everybody.
The board had over 72 hours
Yeah.
to review that resolution. I decided that I would not contact legal counsel, not to squander money when I certainly didn't think it was necessary. I think that resolution was more than well-received by this community, and I also do support you in drafting the resolution. I'll make sure the board has ample time to review it, and then we will vote accordingly. All right,
Yeah, you'll
anybody
have-
else have any other new business?
Yes, I do. I just want to say that I'm extremely disappointed that policy 9240, changes to policy 9240 did not pass this evening. I think that every parent in this district, including those of you sitting at this table, even though I know you voted against it, should be upset and concerned about that. This policy was drafted and reviewed by the former board prior to December, or prior to January of this year. It was voted on unanimously with several of the members sitting at this table here. I know that there were some concerns. We discussed them via email. When it was brought up last meeting, no other board member other than Mr. Scales said anything. No one had anything to say about any concerns, whether or not they shared those concerns. So I won't speak or assume why others at this table did not vote in favor of it. However, when we tabled this policy, it was tabled, and we all just voted on unanimously on the meeting minutes from January 8th. It was tabled until legal could review it. Legal never reviewed these changes again. They did review them last year, which was stated. That legal opinion was shared with the full board. None of those changes went against any federal or state laws. We know this as per our legal counsel. So the only comment that I received back from anyone on this board was Mr. Scales, who said that he thought it opened us up to liability, despite what our legal team said. This policy did not just give rights, right? The state laws give those rights to our parents, but what the changes in this policy did was it committed this board and this district to working with our parents in this district. So I urge any parents that are watching tonight or that will watch on the replay of this to reach out to the board, reach out to our administration, and let them know if you have any concerns, if you have any questions about what your current rights are, because the changes to this policy emphasize where the board stands and what they believe the relationship between this district and the parents are. And while it doesn't change anything legally, because nothing changed legally between the current policy and what these changes were, I do believe that it further explained and emphasized what this board and what this district was committed to providing to our parents as rights. So again, I just want to say how disappointed I am that that did not pass. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anybody else would like to? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Walsh.
Can we please keep the next Cal meeting limited?
I am,
It's extremely too long. We lose the public interest, and it's ridiculously too long.
Okay. All right, Mr. Walsh, I am working on that. Okay, I am working diligently with Dr. Garibay, and we are going to tighten it up a bit, prioritize, and I take your concerns as a priority, so we will correct it, okay? Okay, if there's nothing else, anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Scarborough? Oh, I'm sorry. Anybody else?
I have one last thing.
I'm sorry.
So you had both addressed this briefly, but I just wanted to explain a little bit more. So I sent an email request to Dr. Garibay, who discussed with Dr. Beck the possibility of entering the Innovations in Special Education Award in 2025. It would showcase, all the outstanding programs and services for our students with special needs. So I really just wanted to thank you and Dr. Beck, because the application process, I looked at it, is incredibly lengthy. It's a lot of pictures, and so I had offered my help, so it's still there. But so thank you, because I looked over it and I was like, this is a lot. So I appreciate it.
If we win this award, it would be well worth your efforts, and we certainly appreciate it as a board.
But
so.
it's a tremendous amount of work, so I
Yeah,
I
thank you
wanted
for
the
bringing
public to know that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, Mrs. Cameron. Okay, if there's nothing else, we are going to go into an executive session. It'll probably be all about 10 minutes. It will cover confidential personal matters. At this time, live stream. No action will be taken. The live stream will be, it will be ended at this time, and we will not be going back to live stream. So I'd like to make a motion to move the board meeting into executive session at this time.
Motion.
All right, and like I said, we'll be immediately done after that, so there's no need for the public to stay after.
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Well, did you get the contract? Oh, you're awesome. Okay, awesome. And then, this,
Nothing, it's a big nothing.
okay.